Now, if you love listening to the Financially Free Journey podcast, then you will love our premium subscription edition of the show. You will get early access, ad-free listening, and bonus content that you will not hear on the regular show. So make sure that you hit the subscription button and join the premium fun. Today's episode is brought to you by Azoth. Azoth is a Boston-based women-owned supplement company that makes premium quality supplements for women with a mission to help people reach their highest potential without the harmful side effects of over-the-counter medications. Now, their newest supplement, Boss Flow, is a PMS gummy that helps every woman be a boss no matter what day of the month it is. Now, these little gummies are packed full with a delicious blast of strawberry flavor and powerful vitamins and nutrients to help soothe menstrual cramps, stop bloating, and really balance out hormonal mood swings and acne symptoms that are unfortunately caused by periods. Now, Boss Flow is exclusively offering our listeners 10% off their next purchase. All you have to do is go to Amazon.com and search for Boss Flow gummies and just use the code BOSSFLOW. That's BOSSFLOW, and you're going to get 10% off of your purchase at checkout. You just have to make sure you have an Amazon or an Amazon Prime account in order to get these gummies. So make sure that you order Boss Flow, supplements that help women be bosses on the go. Okay, guys, did you know that creating an income online or adding a new revenue stream to your business has never been easier? I'm pretty sure you know that because we talk about it all the time. Well, have you ever considered taking your knowledge, your skills, and your expertise and really converting it into a course that you can sell online? So I want to introduce you guys to LearnWorlds. LearnWorlds makes it easy to create, host, and sell beautiful online courses that truly have an impact. And with LearnWorlds' intuitive platform and a wealth of resources to educate yourself, you're only a few steps away from building a thriving online business in a booming knowledge economy. So I want you guys to go ahead and click on the link in the show notes, but it's trylearnworlds.com/free. And I want you to start your 30-day free trial today and get that revenue stream started. Well, welcome back to another episode of the Financially Free Journey podcast, and I'm your host, Courtney Dyer. And if you're new here, well, this podcast aims to dispel the seemingly complex topic of personal finances, money management, debt, savings, investing, retirement, and all things small business, anything that really helps you on your journey to financial freedom. So welcome today. Thanks for tuning in. Man, we are in just the middle of summer. It is hot. It's 147 degrees. And we're all out trying to enjoy the summer with our loved ones, our spouses, our children, whatever the case may be with you. And I wanted to really talk about how during the summertime, our spending really seems to ramp up. And actually, according to NerdWallet, which is, we know, a fantastic source, they did a study and it shows that families tend to ramp up their spending when the warm weather hits. And I think we've all experienced this. I know I do personally, right? We want to be out. We want to enjoy the sunshine, get some vitamin D. Well, statistically speaking, parents of children that are about the ages of 3 to 17 plan to spend on average $471 per child on summer activities. So that's things like summer camp or youth sports, movies. And then also the majority of parents, about 80% that had children under the age of 18 also indicated that they're planning on taking some type of summer vacation. And the average is around $2,300. So, summertime can be pricey, right? And so I wanted to just, before we get into the guest segment today, I wanted to touch on, because we're all in the middle of it right now, I wanted to touch on maybe some budget-friendly summer plans and ideas for you guys so you can really beat the heat and the boredom and just really have some unique and frugal summer fun for your whole family. So, again, our kids are probably going to be requesting Disneyland and the amusement parks and, the beaches and all that stuff. But we know we can spice it up and do some other things and make it really fun. So one thing is really turning passions into summer projects. So So, let's face it, when it comes to summer and kids, free time can eventually turn into boredom and them complaining. And for budget-friendly summer activities, really try positioning summertime as an opportunity to pursue different out-of-the-box interests. So, for example, let's say your kids have wanted to learn how to use tools or how to build, something. You can teach that to them and have that be a focus of your summer and the activities, right? Or if they wanted to learn an instrument, whatever the case may be, maybe they want to learn how to cook. You can turn those passions into summer projects. So that's like the first idea I wanted to share with you guys. Another one is to really tap into your local area parks, splash pads, anything that's a free area for your community, and really making that a special outdoors activity. Maybe you can do a picnic. You can schedule it with a friend group of kids from school. Again, it's a free activity that spices it up for the kids and really makes it fun. Another one is to really get together with your community and to host potlucks with family and friends. You can do it themed. You can, have themed food or outfit, whatever the case may be. You can have it fun, whatever the flavor is for your neighborhood. But those are just a couple of quick ideas. Another one is, hiking, having water fights, going to local festivals and checking out farmers markets. So whatever is available for you, be creative. I personally created a summer bucket list binder for my kids, and it has a bingo card and different activities that are really similar to this, that are budget friendly, but great experiences. Because again, in order for us to have great, fun, memorable experiences with our loved ones, it doesn't have to cost an arm and a leg and take you off track of your, debt repayment, if that's what you're trying to do, or investing journey, whatever the case is for you. So I wanted to touch on that because we are all in the middle of it right now, and you don't want to get to the end of the summer and say, oh my gosh, I'm way off track, for this year. Okay, so I also wanted to talk about something that's really heavily talked about in the news right now. It's a bunch of headlines, and this is really inflation. And I touched on this a few episodes ago, and the indication of inflation in our economy and how it directly ties to debt, either ties or doesn't tie to the debt of our country. And so I wanted to talk about Chairman Powell's remarks on inflation. And if you're not familiar, Jerome Powell is the chair of the Federal Reserve. And so he, works independently of our government to help really regulate our economy and our currency and really things like inflation. And so President Biden and Jerome Powell, they recently spoke and they had some remarks about inflation. And Biden had stated that, he wanted to make it very clear to Chairman Powell that, they work independently of the government. And if he needed to take any steps that he deemed necessary to support a strong, durable economy, that he should do that. And those remarks really revealed the direct communication between Biden and Powell about inflation. And the prices are continuing to increase faster and faster than a lot of the policymakers and economists had projected. And so the administration, they've continuously said over the past few months that price hikes are going to be temporary. But with the new coronavirus cases, and in particular the highly transmissible Delta variant that we've all been hearing about over and over, that could really complicate the economic footprint when we're talking about inflation and really the economic growth that we need to recover from the pandemic. So Fed officials have also said that they have no plans to raise interest rates anytime soon to respond to inflation. And if you have been following me on social media, either TikTok or Instagram, you see that I've been posting a lot about the current interest rates of the market, particularly if you look at 30-year mortgage or even 15-year mortgage rates. I know as of yesterday, from recording this, the 30-year interest rate was 2.6 and a 15-year interest rate was 2%. I mean, essentially in the spectrum of things, it's like free money when you think about where interest rates typically are. They're usually at least double that. So when you think about your current financial picture and how inflation can impact you, one thing I want to point out is, number one, have an emergency savings. And an emergency savings is anywhere from 3 to 6 months of your necessities. And this isn't, your Netflix subscriptions and your lattes every morning. This is like keeping the utilities on, having food in the fridge, and paying your rent. Have 3 to 6 months of necessities. The reason why you don't want to have more than that in a savings account right now, in my opinion, is because inflation is at 5.6%. If you're not making at least 5.6% on those funds, your funds are losing value each and every day. So your emergency savings really needs to be the bare bone essentials. And after that, we need to look at where you're at on your financial journey. So if you are, investing, you need to make sure that you're taking the rest and you're investing according to your investment plan. Or if you are right now paying off debt, so you're doing like the debt snowball, and you're really trying to tackle that, make sure that you are doing that, because again, this is a great time to make sure that you take a look at your financial plan. How are you doing with that? And then take into account how inflation could be impacting your finances. The other thing is really making sure to look at, if you do have debt, for example, like a mortgage, an auto loan, this is a really great time to look at refinancing debt into a lower interest rate. Even if you have things like high interest credit cards, if you're able to obtain a personal loan to consolidate all of your credit card debt at a very low interest rate versus what you're paying by holding the balance every month while you're trying to pay it off, this is a really great time to look into those options to save you some money and to lock in a really low rate to put you in a better financial situation for the future. So I wanted to make sure that you guys are looking into that for yourselves. You're being vigilant. You are up to date on how, inflation and our economic policies can be directly impacting you and your wallet, and make sure that you're taking action on the things that we just talked about. So let's move into the next segment. I have a guest that I interviewed a little while back, and I had such a great time talking to her. Her name is Kiara, and Kiara Gray is the owner of Charm City Buyers, which is a real estate investing firm. And she started this journey back in 2012. She was fresh out of college. She was super eager to build a life where, working a 9-to-5 job was optional for her, which I think is probably the dream for the majority of the people listening, right? You want to be able to have that time freedom. So after a few years of really getting into the real estate market, she grew her empire to over 20 rental units. She bought the block, as she likes to say, in Baltimore with over 100,000 renovations underway at once. So she went full force and all in on building her real estate portfolio, and also really making sure that she's giving back to the local community by building up and creating a great real estate market there, which was so cool to talk to her about. Kiara and her husband, they have really found their purpose in building wealth in their community and sharing all of the charm that Charm City has to offer. So regardless of, whatever your financial goal is, if real estate is a piece of diversifying your passive income and your investments, what Kiara has to share during this interview is going to be so critical for you to take back and to take action on. She talks about building generational wealth, using other people's money, or OPM, in order to build her real estate portfolio, which is something you can look at researching for yourself to replicate. And then also investing in something that you have passion for. This is what she's done with Baltimore, and really being able to give back and share with her local community. And she has found major success in the industry. So without further ado, I would love to have you guys listen to my interview with Kiara Gray with Charm City Buyers.
So we actually bought our first real estate property fresh out of college. So we're about a year out of school, 22, 23 years old. And, we kind of got into that slump, that first fall after you graduate and the summer's cool and you have money and then all your friends are going back to party, right? And so we were in this phase of what's next? Is our future full of waiting for pensions and putting away 401ks? And how do we take more control over what that experience is? And so at the time, my husband now, but boyfriend at the time. And so it's like, well, what are we doing, right? Like, what does this look like, not only for myself individually, but for us together as a unit? And so we started to look at a bunch of different things, and real estate really checked all the boxes for us both. He's the first to say real estate was something that I was really pushing because something I had always been passionate about just growing up. I just loved, I was from a rural community in Pennsylvania, watched farms being sold and houses being put up, and just loved that process. So first deal, a year out of college, we were in Connecticut. Neither of us are from Connecticut, close from Baltimore. I'm from PA. And so we were in this new town where young kids had never done renovations before, never really got into real estate, not generational thing, so it's a brand new experience. And so we found this property. It was a 3-unit shell. And so we found it online through this auction house that auctions properties online. And we're like, yeah, let's go for it. We're going to wholesale it because that's what everyone wants to do when they start investing, right? We're going to wholesale it. And so, we purchased the property. There's so many different great details I can tell you about this first deal. So I'm trying to organize them all in my head. So we purchased the first one. We bought it all cash, $26,000. We had saved up. I had a roommate. My husband lived at home with his mom and shared a room with his brother out of college. So we had saved up cash. We didn't know what for, but and so really it was for our wedding, but we bought a house instead, but that's a whole other conversation.
It's way better than spending it on a wedding. I'm sure you can say that now too, huh?
Oh, for sure. And so we were going to wholesale this property that we bought all cash. And so really we were just going to kind of resell it. So all our numbers were great. And so we knew that it was an awesome deal. As a shell, we knew it needed a lot of renovation. And what happened was, what we found out, the neighborhood that we bought that property in had a really, really tough reputation. We had gone by there. We thought it was good. Like we, saw the numbers. We knew it was a great potential. But when we were going to like RIA meetings and stuff like that, people didn't see it. They're like, no, I would not investing over there. Literally, we sat on the stoop of the house one day and someone walked by and said, don't you know, like this street is nicknamed Murder for this neighborhood.
Oh no.
And so we're like, wait, what? Like this one, the one we're on? And so
we just spent all of our savings on instead of our wedding. Is that right? What you mean?
Exactly. And what was so funny though, we still doubled down. We're like, we know our numbers. We know that there's a ton of potential. And so what happened was when we realized we couldn't wholesale it to the guys at the RIA meeting like we planned, it was time to roll up our sleeves and figure it out. And so we started to share our vision for the home and the numbers and just kind of telling our story. This is kind of really where we fell in love with turning vacant houses into homes in these forgotten neighborhoods, as we call it, and seeing the value in these neighborhoods versus the reputation and the history of them. And so we actually connected with a nonprofit. And that nonprofit was actually focused in that same neighborhood. So we ended up working with them, got $120,000 budget to renovate the property. And that's how our first deal got started.
So you connected with what a great way to be creative in a situation that could have turned out very sour, right? You're like, we dumped $26,000 into this young college students. I mean, that's a lot of money and on Murder Row, mind you. And so what a creative way to salvage a deal. And so you guys renovated it. You had $120,000 budget. So what came of the property? Like, what was the end result?
Yeah, so we still own the property. Our very first tenant still lives there.
Wow.
It's one of our, it became a success story. And so that first property gave us so many lessons learned that we took to be able to rinse and repeat and be able to grow our portfolio from there. But yeah, that property ends up, it cash flows probably about $2,600, brings in about $2,600 to $2,800 a month. And about 1,500 of that is pure cash flow. So
So guys, did you just hear that? $1,500 in positive cash flow. I would say that you guys definitely know what you're talking about. And that was your first property, mind you. So let's fast forward to today, because that was 2012. Yeah. What does your real estate empire look like now?
Yeah, so we have, well over 20 rental units. We actually have done quite a few large projects in Baltimore, doing different blocks, being involved in multi-block projects.
Wow.
We've actually recently acquired a construction company, the construction company we were working on, and a lot of those blocks, we ended up working with them and becoming owners. So we're all over working really focused on development and making sure that we have a hand and a say in what Baltimore continues to look like, because we do focus here in Baltimore, Maryland.
Well, it sounds like you have a passion too about not only, of course, I mean, personally, we all want to have a great, source of income, but it sounds like you guys are really passionate about these forgotten neighborhoods, as you mentioned, in Baltimore specifically, and really being able to revitalize certain areas.
Yeah, absolutely. I think for me, my goal when we started was to leave my full-time job by the time I was 30. I did that at 27 off of our rental properties, and really starting to focus on from there, like, what am I passionate about? And what I found was that that opportunity to revitalize neighborhoods, that opportunity to change the narrative on what it looks like for these neighborhoods and cities to change and develop, became like my purpose and my passion, and where I spend all of my time these days. And so to not only do it, but also position folks to do the same alongside us is really, really important. And Baltimore, when we think about so many other cities like Baltimore that have had, challenging histories and all of those types of things, we know that those things change, right? And those cities change. And so for us, we know that with better information now, we can make better proactive decisions to get different results. And so that's what we're going to make happen here in Baltimore.
That's amazing to hear. Again, it's where your talent and your passion collides is a great way to focus on making money, because then you never feel like you're working, right? Because you're so excited about what you do. I want to backtrack a little bit. You mentioned that you left your full-time job at 27. This is where a lot of people get hung up, right? It's like that gray zone from, yes, I work a 9 to 5. I don't want to continue in the rat race, but how do I actually make the transition to be my own, employer essentially, and have that security? I mean, as much as you can create for yourself. So walk us through, how did you know it was time to quit the full-time job and to do this full-time?
Yeah. So, I mean, there was a few different layers. I think one was when I felt like I was losing more than I was gaining by spending my time at work. And so one thing that I did was really focus on what is going to help me get to that goal, that I want to leave my job by 30. And so I changed careers a little bit, or changed companies, and focused on working not only at a company that was going to give me the skill set to run my own business. So I went to a startup and ran operations for them. So how do you run a startup? How do you grow a startup? How do you scale? Which was really important. But on the other side too, had a really strong salary. And so I focused on, how do I position myself for that goal? And so my 9 to 5 was really building up how I transitioned into making my 5 to 9 be the whole shebang. So that was a big part of that. And then from there, of course, setting that foundation. So being able to make sure we were buying properties that cash flowed really well. We were paying properties off. We were, positioning ourselves to make sure that even without 100 property portfolio, we were still bringing in enough to be able to withstand not only ourselves, but we had a daughter as well, right? So you want to make those decisions for the entire family. And then from there, it was about being willing to roll up my sleeves. That transition from that comfort of knowing that check's coming every other week or whatever it is, to working for yourself. And now you have to set your own schedule, and you have to figure out what you need to do to make things work and all that good stuff. And so it really just turned on kind of that entrepreneurial spirit that much further. And focus on too, like you said, how do you, make money and continue to build off of your passion.
I think there's a really tangible tip that you just shared that I want to reiterate for the listeners is you made a transition within the 9 to 5 career that you had to get applicable skills to help you be successful to make the transition. And I think that is a really critical step that you took. Again, it's okay, I'm going to go to a startup. How do I make a startup flourish? What skills, what processes do I need to understand that I can then transfer over to my, real estate empire that you guys have built and have been very successful with? And so again, a lot of people say, well, how do I go from right now? Well, there may be a couple steps in between, and that's a very tangible step. So, if someone is working as a receptionist, for example, but they want to be a social media influencer, well, maybe you need to look at making a transition into working for a company that's already established, an agency, get those skills that are necessary before you jump out, on your own. So that is a fantastic step that you shared. I wanted to touch on too, you mentioned that you have a daughter, which is, doing all this and being a parent, right? It's already hard. And now it's like, let me add another layer on. So talk to us a little bit about, I feel so strongly that we are responsible for really bettering our children, right? Leaving them in a better financial situation than maybe what we grew up with or the amount of knowledge that we have. So talk to us about how you are setting your daughter up for success. Like, what does that look like as a mom?
Yeah, so she runs the show, point blank and period.
Of course.
Right? So she is the CEO, and she will tell you herself. So when we think back to that first property, when we were doing that huge renovation, I was pregnant with her. She's been with us the entire time.
It's a trio.
Yeah, absolutely. It's been a trio since the beginning. And so, at this point, she's almost 8, and she'll overhear me on a phone call with a contractor. And she's like, wait, mommy, he's not doing his job well. Like, why are we behind? And I'm like, yeah, I don't know what's going on. She's like, well, did you fire him? And so,
I will. I'll go fire for you.
Can you hand me the phone?
Today's episode is brought to you by Hellofresh. Do you feel like you are stuck in a dinner rut? Well, with Hellofresh, you get fresh, pre-measured ingredients with mouth-watering seasonal recipes that are delivered right to your door. Skip all of those trips to the grocery store and really count on HelloFresh to make home cooking easy, fun, and affordable. And you can now enjoy cooking and getting dinner on the table in 30 minutes or less. With over 25 recipes to choose from each week, there is something for everyone to enjoy. All recipes are designed and tested by professional chefs and nutritional experts to really ensure deliciousness and simplicity. Now, go to the link in the show notes to get $80 off, including free shipping on HelloFresh, the #1 meal kit. So let's take a moment to thank this episode's sponsor, PHOCUS. Now, PHOCUS is a sparkling water with a little spark, guys. It's delicious, it's health conscious, and it's thoughtfully caffeinated sparkling water. It's infused with a boost of natural tea caffeine, and the balance of the L-theanine can really get you that clean energy that you want without the sugar and the calories, and most importantly, the crash. So you gotta ditch the sugary sodas and the energy drinks that are really overloaded with the sugar and ingredients that you don't know what they are or even how to pronounce them. The natural caffeine derived from tea gives you the same boost as an 8-ounce cup of coffee, but it's refreshing and it's thirst quenching. And let's just get it straight. Our body needs water, but it doesn't have to be boring. The company has a reverse osmosis water, and it's lightly infused with crisp carbonation to really refresh and hydrate you without the sugar or the guilt. So make sure that you go and you check out. They've got a wide range of flavors. They've got blood orange, mixed berry, cherry, cola, crisp apple, root beer, grapefruit, and the list goes on and on. It sounds really delicious. I want one right now. I want you to check out the link in the show notes. It's drinkfocus.com, but it's drink PHOCUS.com, and use the code FREEDOM to get 20% off on your order of Focus sparkling water.
And so she, it's really interesting and exciting to know that things that are new to us as experiences or things that we're doing for the first time, she's experiencing as a child. Like, this stuff is normal, right? And even one thing that we talk about all the time, especially being, young Black real estate investors and developers, like normalizing that experience, normalizing, being able to travel and, do all of these different things and be able to transform communities, and seeing that the rows of homes that we buy completely vacant and now they're homes and people live here.
Wow.
And, so that's normal to her. So for us, it's always been about exposure. It's always been about normalization and just empowering her to experience and understand what we're doing, but also giving her the opportunity to still choose her own path, because part of all of this is being able to provide her options, give her the privilege of having the option to make choices as she gets older to experience, what she wants to.
No, I love that. Again, it's the involvement and the open communication, like the example you gave. Do we need to fire that contractor, Mom? Because again, the more exposure that children have, and I'm a huge advocate for, I do not understand why financial education is not streamlined across our whole country, number one. But number two, like the younger, the better, right? And the more we normalize it and talk to our children and we're open and we communicate, the better set they're going to be to be able to make great decisions for themselves. And it sounds like your daughter's already, she is the CEO. She wants to fire the contractor. You might want to let her. I don't know. So
Exactly. Absolutely.
Okay, I want to get into some specifics of real estate investing, particularly financing, right? Because this is where a lot of people get hung up. So, maybe they bought a first home, but again, we know if you're personally guaranteeing a home, when you're looking from an underwriter's perspective, you've got loan to value ratios, you've got debt to income ratios. So if your income can't support multiple properties, you're not going to be able to obtain them. So talk to us about how you guys have financed this, or how does that look for you, and how, what do you guys suggest for people?
Yeah. So that first deal, again, kind of becomes a framework for how we looked at everything going forward. So working with that first, the nonprofit, really opened our eyes into really, when it comes to getting access to money, it's just another problem to solve. You get creative on how you solve financial problems. They literally print money 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. Like, it's your job to figure out how to get access to that. And so throughout our entire journey, we've always been really creative on how we access those funds. And thinking back at that time, one thing that was really smart, I don't know if we had the foresight, but we really wanted to keep our personal and our business debt separate, so that if we wanted to, buy our personal home, or we wanted to do all those things, that we didn't have those issues with the debt to income ratios. And we knew we wanted to leave our full-time jobs, all of those different things. And so what we were able to do was really structure our portfolio around creative financing, whether that was using private lenders or seller financing properties, the nonprofits, just different creative strategies to say, I have a financial issue I'm trying to solve. I need to get access to funds to buy this property. You, Mr. Seller, you need to get rid of this property for one reason or the other. How do we come up with a solution that hits all of these different things? And so that's really how we approached our deals, and even how we found them, how we targeted different opportunities and properties around the fact that we knew we were going to use creative strategies to be able to purchase them. So how we looked at deals and where we looked for deals were different than for someone that's going to potentially use like a bank, or someone that is going to ask for your credit score and your income and do all that underwriting. Because when you're creative in solving those problems, you get to be in the driver's seat on what that looks like.
No, I love that. Because again, we all think about the traditional lending options because that's what everybody is taught. And it is a great option for certain types of real estate, right? But when you're trying to build, and scale a huge portfolio, or as you mentioned, keeping your personal debt separate from your business debt, there are other alternative financing options. So can you tell the listeners just a little bit more about how you found the properties? Because you said it wasn't the traditional ways, right? And then like how you find the creative financing. Like where could they go to do this if they wanted to?
Yeah. So one thing that always worked really well for us was being able to work directly with sellers. So when you think about wholesaling, so wholesaling being the practice where folks are marketing and finding sellers directly. So whether they're calling or sending letters or texting or whatever folks are doing these days, being able to contact sellers and then negotiate with them on creating a sale. Now, wholesalers, what they do is they take the right to purchase that property and sell that right to someone else, and that's their wholesale fee. What we did was we took a similar approach, but just didn't sell the property. So we were able to get properties at really great rates and hold on to them. And during our conversations with those sellers, be able to have the conversation to say, you know, well, what if rather than paying you $100,000 for this property, what if I pay you $1,000 a month for 100 months? You know, if your goal is consistent cash flow because you're retiring, you know, that helps to spread it out and so you know what's coming every month. Or, you know, you were a landlord and you don't feel like being a landlord anymore, but you're kind of comfortable with getting those monthly checks. Well, what if we try X, Y, and Z? And so really the biggest thing when it comes to structuring creative financing, specifically seller financing, is you're only limited by your ability to ask the question, right? Sometimes people are afraid to hear no. And in this business, no just means not right now, you know,
right. No, permanently.
Yeah. Okay, cool. I'll call you in a couple months or next year, whatever. And so being able to ask the right questions really positions you to be creative in pulling things together. And of course, it's the relationship business. So being able to build those relationships, even have those conversations is huge.
Oh, that's so good. Yeah. And that's a great tidbit because again, we know we've got these words that we can research, you know, wholesale, seller financing. It gives the listeners a lot of information to say, okay, I'm going to take this and I'm going to do some work and figure out how this would work for me. So I love that. What I would like you to do is tell us, number one, the worst mistake maybe that you guys made that people can avoid. And then what's like the number one piece of advice that you could give someone that's just getting started?
Yeah. So, oh my goodness. I mean, I think we are valedictorians from the School of Hard Knocks, right? So we jumped in and figured it out. And so there's plenty of bumps and bruises along the way. One of the ones that I think folks will connect with the most often is really with contractors and construction, especially at the level of rehabs that we do. So our properties tend to be a front wall with a tree going up the middle. Like we're doing full redevelopment, 100%, darn near new construction every single time. And so with that, we've had our bouts with contractors. We've worked with folks that we wanted to bring with us all the way to the top, and they just kind of completely fumbled the bag along the way and just were unable to, you know, manage the finances or focus on getting the work done. Or even contractors that were, you know, really great with us, but over here they were robbing Peter to pay Paul, and someone ended up having to hold the bag. And so, you know, those types of issues, you know, it doesn't take much to make a $50,000, $60,000 mistake, just like that, and something completely outside of your hands. And so one thing that I really, really focus on when I'm talking to folks, especially those who are getting started or those who have anxiety around construction and contractors, is really trusting your gut when it comes to how you build your team. And so what I mean by that is a lot of times you're looking at a new property and you're trying to figure out your construction estimate. And so, you know, you're going to get a contractor to walk through the property with you, right? Well, one of those flags is, well, okay, you scheduled to meet with them at 10 o'clock, but they didn't show up until 10:30. So what does that tell you, right? Are they going to get the work done? Yeah, right? Red flag. If they can't show up on time, are they going to get the project done on time, right? Are they able to manage their calendar? If they can't manage their calendar, how can they manage your schedule?
Yeah.
Especially if they're doing multiple properties. Absolutely. And so those kind of different pieces, those like kind of gut checks that we tend to ignore are usually telling ourselves something. And that's something that I've learned, even when it's come to needing to change out team members, or we talk a lot about building a bench. So always having options to switch folks out. And so even trusting your gut on when it's time to make that change and not letting that time like linger, because every day is a dollar, especially when you have financing or if you're working with hard money lenders or things like that. Every day is payments going out the door. And so being able to make those decisions and build your well before you're thirsty, building up that bench so you have those options, you're able to move people through, really helps with being able to manage through things that just happen in this business, which stuff comes up and things don't go as planned, or, someone was great and then they woke up one day and decided not to be. And so you have to be, ready to address those things. And so being prepared proactively has been really big for, our mentees and for other people getting started.
Oh yeah, you gotta be willing to put in that second string. You've got to have a second string and then be willing to do it, because again, like you said, every day is money. So if a contractor isn't following through, that, especially like you mentioned, a hard money lender, that can be thousands of dollars for them to say, oh, you know what, I couldn't get to it today. Well, that's not going to work when we're on a tight schedule. So vetting out your contractors and your team is huge. And I love that, like trusting your gut. You're an intellectual person, you're smart, you can make a good decision and vet people. So trust yourself. I love that.
Yeah.
Tell us a little bit about Charm City Buyer. So what is it that you help people do exactly? I'm sure it's real estate. I don't know if my gut right that you help people with real estate. Tell us a little bit about it, what you guys do for people.
Yeah, absolutely. So we, right alongside my passion and what we do every day, we focus on how do we position folks to find success in real estate in Baltimore. And so we focus on really understanding a market like Baltimore that tends to be really different than so many other spots. Baltimore is very block to block. We have a very challenging history. It's kind of not a spot where you just kind of come in and figure it out. You will fail. And so for us, we want to make sure that as Baltimore continues to change and develops, folks have the tools and the resources and the guidance to find success in that and be able to ride that wave. And so that's what we've been doing. So we have our mentorship program where folks are able to leverage the fact that this is what we do every single day. And so when it comes to, you're having an issue with, an inspector or your contractor or whatever, like we know the players, we know the people, and we know kind of how this city works. And so we're able to guide folks through that process. So it's been great. Like folks come in and they're buying property in less than 6 months and building complete empires. We've made millionaires out of our program, which is amazing. To not only, the numbers are cool, but it's the impact for me. So being able to take those vacant houses and make them homes, really focused on making a positive impact in Baltimore. And so that's what we do. That's what we're all about, sharing our story and our experiences, of course, and then getting into the nitty gritty with our mentees on guiding them on how to do the same for themselves and their family.
Now, what if I'm a real estate investor, but I'm located in California, for example? Are you able to help someone that wants to maybe invest in the Baltimore market, but they're not local?
Yeah, absolutely. And that's a really big part of percentage of folks in our Next Gen Accelerator are in like the Californias, the New Yorks, the markets where we've already been priced out. And so why not take the things that you learned watching that happen where you are and apply it into another city, knowing that that's what's coming. And so that's what a lot of our Cali and New York or wherever Arizona mentees are doing. And then being able to do it with the resources to understand a market that you're not in. So it really helps to level that playing field so that you're able to compete with people who are right up the street. And understand what that block looks like or what the potential in that neighborhood is or what's planned for 5 years from now up the street, And so, yeah, our mentees in Cali do just fine from afar.
Well, good. And you're there to guide them. Now, one last question. What's your thought on the real estate market right now? I mean, it is so hot, right? Like you just see tons of videos and memes about trying to buy a house right now. I mean, do you think it's going to continue to rise? Like, what's your take?
Yeah, it's so crazy right now. It is super hot. Great for us. We have a couple properties that were pre-sold. We, didn't even have floors down and were throwing offers at us. So that's great. But yeah, I mean, I think that we are well overdue for a correction. I think a lot of the market right now has been pumped up by policy. And so it's only a matter of time where things start to shift. I'm not big on kind of predicting the future because, of course, who knows what's going to happen. But we've been on a high in real estate for a very long time, and it's time for a correction. So we'll see what that all looks like.
It's cyclical, right? I mean, you look back history-wise, and it's like this, it's just what happens. And so it's great for people to realize that, to take that into account when they're planning on getting into this business. So I wanted to get it from your point of view as an expert that does this day in and day out. And so I just thank you so much. You have shared so many actionable tips. And guys listening, I want you to make sure that if you're driving or doing your laundry or whatever while you're listening to this podcast, that you go back and you take these tips and you take action, because that's the point of this episode. That's why we bring on experts like Kiara to be able to help you on your financially free journey. So where can the listeners find you if they have more questions and they want to get a hold of you?
Yeah, absolutely. So you can follow us on Instagram, Twitter, find us on Facebook. It's Charm City Buyers everywhere. We also have a YouTube channel. So you can find us on YouTube, Charm City Buyers as well.
Oh, fantastic. Guys, you can binge YouTube videos. You can follow them online. Make sure that you go do that. Go connect. Again, it's taking action, taking yourself to that next level so that way you can be able to achieve your financial goals. So thank you so much for coming on today. I appreciate it. And as always, guys, if you're not already, make sure that you're following us. It's on Instagram, TikTok, all the places. It's at Financially Free Journey. And make sure you leave us a review for the show. We want to know if you like this episode and your thoughts. So until next time.